You everybody, welcome to December. It's Friday, December 1st, the third day of our three-day budget workshop. Starting here at 6 p.m. this evening, it's a continuation of our previous meeting from yesterday. So just to do a brief recap, we did finish off our proposed operating budget at a proposed tax levy increase of 6.49%, which 6.45%, which included, of course, the new RCMP additions. We are looking at introducing a brand new bona fide transit system in 2024, which is very exciting coming forward for our residents. And also, we allocated a new procurement position as part of the operating budget to provide to the expertise we need to do very, very aggressive bidding on projects, make sure we get the best deals we possibly can for residents on future projects. So a very exciting operating budget. We did get into capital last night, which is on page 22 of the hard copy of your budget, if you got a hard copy in front of you. We did do renewal last night. Pardon me. We also completed the first line in growth, being the joint high school. And at this point, I will now continue on with capital, starting at the BSRC pool CO2 tank relocation and going down the list to the bottom where it says council chambered camera. So with that, I'll open up to members of council. Oh, one thing too, do we have Sam online remotely? He can hear us. Sam, hear us okay?
I'm here. Good evening, folks.
Okay, good. Thank you. Make sure you're online. I didn't see your picture for a second there. Okay, so with that, I'll open up to members of council for questions or any thoughts or any motions perhaps that may be coming through with the growth section. I would prefer to start if we can line by line, but I'm open to members doing things at various parts of the growth there if we need to. Councilman Newkirk, Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, just being mindful of your last statement there. Do you want to entertain questions, or do you want to just get into motions, or like how do you want to approach?
Okay, I should maybe clarify that. Yeah, you know what? Last time we did motions right from the get-go. So what I'd like to do to keep things moving along as fast as we can, I'd like to maybe start with the CO2. Any questions there? If not, then let's do the next one and go.
Yeah, I think that predictable way is probably helpful for everyone.
Let's do that. That's what I thought I said, but it wasn't clear. I apologize. We'll start more clearly. And any questions on the BSRC pool CO2 tank relocation? Councilor Telebus, Nathan, you have the floor on this topic.
Perfect. Thank you. I just want to chat with the administration in regards to this really quick. Just going through the response to my question, just in regards to the existing condition of the CO2 tank. To the best of my knowledge, there are still some groups with CO2 tanks in a setup like this. I'm just curious if this is something, given that the CO2 tank is in decent condition, if it's something that we're considered grandfathered in because we've had this tank in its existing location. I'm just hoping someone could clarify if that's a possibility within the building code.
Mr. Lewacki.
Through the mayor to Councillor Natellenboss, thanks for the question. We have had historic issues with the tanks and leaks and CO2 issues in the space. We also had an assessment done, an engineering assessment by a mechanical engineer that indicated a recommendation to put those tanks outside in order to meet code regulations and so forth.
Okay, thank you. I just want to clarify because the response I was given was that the CO2 tank is obviously located within the building, but it's in good operating condition. So is that not correct, or just looking for confirmation?
Mr. Lewacki?
That is correct. The tank is operating. We do maintain it. It is operating as intended. However, we have experienced leaks in the past, which are not necessarily a result of poor condition. The tank is at 400 PSI, so we can see leaks through the system, which are a health and safety hazard that we are trying to mitigate through the recommendations through the report that we've been provided.
Okay, perfect. And just one last thing, just to clarify, it's solely a recommendation then to make this move with the CO2 tank?
Yes,
Oh, sorry, I apologize. Mr. Lewacki, please, I'll go to CEO Schwartz for a follow-up.
Yes, the report is a recommendation from a professional engineering firm to relocate the tanks to the exterior of the building.
CO Schwartz.
Yeah, and I just want to add, it's a matter of risk, right? It's a risk abatement. Yes, they are grandfathered. Yes, they met the code of the day. No, they don't meet the code of the day right now. We have had issues of venting. We're concerned about the effects of that and goes anywhere from asphyxiation and there's a whole number of other things. So I'm all about risk, but when it comes to people's lives, I'm not interested in accepting that risk. So that's why we put it in.
Thank you, CO Schwartz. Counselor, you're good? Or anything follow up on that?
I'm just curious if I would make a motion now or just wait till the end.
Is it specific on this topic? Now's the time.
Okay. So Madam Clerk, I would just like to make the motion that we remove this upgrade just for this current time, given that this tank is in good operating condition, and it isn't necessarily I guess unaccepted or it's not a known practice to have a CO2 tank within a building and a facility, especially for a pool setting and a rec setting like we have here.
Thank you, Counselor. Just you motion me up in a second. If it's correct, please make your motion when you're ready.
Perfect. I'd like to put forward the motion that the proposed 2024 municipal capital budget be amended by deleting the funding in the amount $300,000 for the BSRC pool CO2 tank relocation as set out on page 30 of the 2024 proposed budget.
Okay, you kind of spoke to it before you said it, which is okay. Anything more you want to add to it before I open up questions from council?
Yes, I just to speak to it, obviously, risk is always a concern and health and safety is of the utmost concern. But given the frequency that we do see tanks like this in a similar location, I just don't know that it is necessarily financially prudent to be relocating this, given that it is in good operating condition. If we had seen a scenario where it wasn't in good operating condition, 100%, this is something I would support. But given that it's a solid structure, and I would assume ABSA approved, that we're able to continue the way we've continued in the past.
Thank you, Councillor. Members of council for questions for our councillor on the motion, or question administration on the motion. Councillor Barnhart. Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, to the administration. This perplexes me, obviously. We have an expert opinion that there's risk involved, and I don't like to go against expert opinion in case there's an accident and we haven't listened to that opinion. So I'm just wondering if I understand correctly, the reason we're doing this is because it's inside the building, not outside. And did the codes change? This is a relatively new building. So can you help me understand why we're in this situation right now?
Mr. Lewacki.
Through the mayor to Councillor Barnhart, the tank was put in, the tanks are in the building. It's in the older portion of the BSRC, not the new addition portion. And so the codes now indicate that there are violations of code and regulations that I'm not going to get into what those are, but essentially the engineering report recommended, based on a review of many regulations in code, that they recommend moving this tank outside due to health and safety concerns related to, as mentioned, CO2 as an asphyxiant, can cause fatalities and other health-related issues. So as administration, we felt that was an unacceptable risk, and we're recommending that this project proceed.
So just to be clear, I mean, I'm not asking for a legal opinion, but it appears that if someone were to claim that they had something wrong as a result of that CO2 in the air, would we be at risk of potentially losing that lawsuit? I mean, I know you're not a lawyer, but I'm just wondering, is that the concern, that there's risk here of something happening and we didn't listen to the experts?
I would say that based on the recommendations and the report, which I read through cover to cover yesterday that there is risk there.
CO Schwartz, you want to wade in on the conversation?
Yeah, I do. I want to answer Councilor Barnhart's question. You know, this is clearly a life safety risk that we were now made aware of, in our opinion. So, you know, somebody dies, somebody gets sick, we don't want to wait. We're aware that the city of Edmonton is paying to have every single one of their CO2 tanks placed outside. This is a best practice. I hate to fearmonger, but I want to bring us back to Fernie and the ammonia. That was a best practice, not followed. And look what happened there. We don't want that to happen here.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I would not like to spend money we don't need to spend, but I happen to believe that when the experts tell us there's a risk, that we are then in a position of having to accept that or hire different experts. But yeah, appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McCook, Kat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Was the trigger for the review due to some of the leaks that we had?
Through the mayor to Councillor McCook, I'm not actually sure what triggered the review. I think it's just part of our due diligence to check the system and see what we needed to do. But I'm not exactly certain what triggered it. I know that the review was done in August of this year and did indicate some of these health and safety concerns that we're discussing here. And the recommendation was to move the tanks outside.
Okay.
CO Schwartz, follow up.
The way it was communicated to me is it was picked up on a safety inspection. We are either going to have to remove these tanks and put them outside, or we're going to absorb some other costs around alarms and detection systems, because what we found through the inspection is that the systems that are in place right now are insufficient.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I'm of similar thought of Councillor Barnhart. I'm not a professional in it. I don't know enough about it. And so I think the fact that we do have a review that suggests that we remove it, my risk is, yes, if something did happen, we would be at great risk because we know that the suggestion is to move it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further, Councillor Sam, I see your hand's not up, so I see you on my screen now. So see no further comments. I will make a comment myself too. I'm not in favor of the motion. I have every confidence in the report we got, and the risk mitigation to me is paramount. And I do believe, I'm not saying the motion is against risk. That's not what I'm saying. But to me, as Councillor McCook mentioned, I don't have the expertise to understand this, and we have to rely on the experts from time to time. That's part of our job as a council, and any kind of risk that involves human life. And this could be one of them. And it's one of those kind of situations where it's going to happen, it's going to be bad. Catastrophic. So I'm in favor of the report to move the tank. So I will be not in favor of the motion before us. See no further comments to speak. Councilor Telebus, you have the opportunity to have one last closing comment before I call for the vote, if you wish to speak. Yes, your mic is on.
Thank you. I guess just clarification in terms of what's the lifespan on this tank? Because I guess my concern is if we're moving this tank and then we have to replace it in a few years, my suggestion would be to get a new tank. But yeah, just curious on the suggested or expected life remaining on this tank.
Mr. Lewicki, are you able to answer that as best you can?
Through the mayor to Councillor Tellenboss, I don't know what the lifespan of the tank is. I believe the new project would include replacement of the existing tanks and resizing of the system and so forth. I'd have to check into that, but that was my understanding.
Perfect, thank you. Given that I know I won't have the support here, I'll just retract the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, that is your prerogative. I appreciate that. So the motion is withdrawn. See no further discussion on the CO2 tank. I'll move on to the RCMP security upgrade. Any concerns, questions, or comments from council on that item? See no hands going up. Appreciate that. Moving on right along is BSRC bouldering wall. Any questions, concern on that one? Councillor Natelibus. Nathan, you have the floor on this one.
Thank you. Just looking for clarification on this. I do appreciate upgrading our facilities, so I'm not against investing in something like this, but I just want to clarify that we are investing in this product for the lessee that will be making somewhat of a profit on this. Am I correct in saying that?
Mr. Suter.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Councilor Nantelabos. Yeah, it's similar to the climbing wall we have now. That's Beaumont's asset and they operate it for us. So this is a similar expansion into a vacant space where we looked at trying to put retail in there. There was no uptake on that for the last 3 years, basically. This was an opportunity that we thought made sense with what we're trying to deliver there in a gap in programming as an example. So yes, it's similar to what we're doing now. We own the asset, we own the equipment, they operate it on our behalf.
Thank you. Councillor, any further questions on that?
Yeah, just a clarification. I believe that there was a correction on the operating cost, if I remember correctly from discussion, but right now it's showing that 100,000 operating cost, I guess 2024 up until 2028 per year is
Mr. Suter?
I spoke briefly about that last night. That was a cost we put in a little while back, and we've had further negotiations on what we were doing with the operator in there, and as far as providing a drop-in service that they've been running on our behalf, and what that looks like expanding into the new space, as well as what the revenue from the lease, the renegotiated lease on the expanded space, combined with the existing space, equipment, has been back and forth for quite a while here. So that number has definitely come down. We've also got a potential sponsorship for the program, as well as some revenue that we're seeing both in terms from the lease and from drop-in charges. I would like to make it revenue, like cover the cost of it. That's what we're trying to accomplish with this.
Perfect. So sorry, just to clarify, we would like to make the revenue to cover this cost. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Suter. Councillor, you're good? Okay, seeing no further discussion or any motions coming from this one, let's move right on down the line. City Hall additional flagpoles, any questions, concerns, motion from council on this one? I'm not aware of any comments coming from anybody, so I'm seeing no hands going up. We'll continue on. Traffic safety program. I do believe Councillor Monkoff-Swain would like to speak to this motion or this particular item. So Sam, I'll go to you first, please.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. And maybe a question for administration first before getting into a discussion. I wonder if administration could speak to the plan. How are we looking at rolling out some of these signalized crosswalks across our community?
That'd be Mr. Lewicki or I'm assuming, Ms. O'Neill, please. Your
Thank
mic's
you.
on.
Oh, thanks. Through the mayor to Councillor Monkoff-Swain. So for next year, we have a few items planned out. We have the existing crosswalk at 32nd Ave and 50th Street that will move to the overhead lit crosswalk. We also will be installing painted zebra painting at 2 locations on 43rd Ave near the Composite High School and also at 60th Ave and 65th Street. Any remaining funds will be prioritized for other calming measures throughout the summer. And we also plan to do more studies to determine the most appropriate locations for 2025.
Yeah, okay, thanks for that. So where I'm going with this, and I've shared this before, when of all the comments and questions that I get from residents, if I was to put those on a pie chart, the largest wedge would certainly be about these crosswalks. Especially as we get into the winter months, it's dark, kids are leaving school, and all those crosswalks when they walk into school, it's still pretty dark. And so I would like to significantly beef up this program, especially those the rectangular rapid safety program or whatever, just the flashing lights of those crosswalks around schools. So I would like to add some money from the capital budget into this. I understand there's like my ideal scenario would be that every crosswalk in Beaumont has these flashing lights. I recognize we're not going to be able to get there. These are about $20,000 each. I also don't know if we need to study this much more. I think we put them near schools. So I do have a motion that I'd like to bring forward to add some money from the capital budget into this. So I'll wait for that to come up and then I'll make my motion. So I will, I'll move that the proposed 2024 capital budget be amended by adding funding in the amount of 200,000 for the traffic safety program. For the purpose of it, to be funded. So I'll have to reword this. Clearly, I know we don't have enough money in the traffic in this reserve. So I'd like this to come from capital. So maybe just a question before I make this motion from administration. I don't think this has to come out of that reserve. Can this come straight out of the capital budget, or what's the best way to for me to get $200,000 in there, which would get us 10 signalized crosswalks this year?
Mr. Blanco, possibly, or Mr. Dollar. Mr. Blanco, are you able to shed some light on the question from the count? Oh, hang on, at the wrong mic there. There you go. Your mic's on now.
Sure. Thanks for the question. Outside of the traffic safety reserve, the next funding source that this would come from would be government transfers.
Yeah. So that's what I was thinking. So there you go.
Hang on, Sam. It's almost done typing there. Just give it a second. I think it's done now. Can you read it okay from where you are?
I can read it. I just does it have to be for the traffic safety? I don't know if the brackets 155 to 455. I think we're just saying add 200,000 for the safety program. Yeah, so I'll read the motion. And thank you for the adjustment here. So I'll move that the proposed 2024 capital budget be amended by adding funding in the amount of $200,000 for the traffic safety program for the purpose of increasing traffic safety enhancements, e.g. lighting for crosswalks, to be funded from government transfers.
So Sam, just to be clear, you did not mention the words from 155 to 4, that they'll take those out?
Correct.
Yeah, that's good. Just so we're clear from this end.
Yeah, I just didn't want it to be confusing around what's reserves and just $200,000 coming from government grants.
Okay.
I'll speak to it very, very briefly here. As I mentioned, I don't want to sit here and point out to administration where they should go, like which specific crosswalks. But you just drive around our schools at 7:30 in the morning or kind of 4:30 at this time right now, and it's pretty hard to see. So I would eventually like to see this come into a rolling program to be a bit more aggressive. And then just adding a few, and just for council's background, if you did not see the written questions that came back, it was about $20,000 for one of these signalized crosswalks, and the thinking here behind this is doing them in bulk. Ideally, we'll see if admin can get a deal by doing them in bulk, and there is some project management fees that are associated with these. And again, I'd like to use some efficiencies and see if we can execute this across the city where administration thinks is best in 2024.
Thank you, Councillor. I have 3 councillors willing to speak on this motion. So Councillor Newkirk, you're starting us off, followed by Councillor McCook, Penrod, and then Telebus. Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. This comment goes to this project and all the moving forward is that last night council injected some horsepower into the procurement process within the city, and I'm wholly expecting to see the savings that Councillor Monkhoff-Swain suggests around doing things in multiples and reducing project management fees and getting better pricing and stuff. So I'm not going to say that multiple times tonight. I really think we're going to benefit from that decision we made last night through all these projects. So that's kind of the first bullet point in my head, Mayor. Second, Councillor Monkhoff-Swain, this motion doesn't speak to the fact that you suggested we know where these should go. Did you change your mind on wanting to direct administration to not spend money studying and spend money putting crosswalks in instead of studying what we already know, quote unquote?
Sam?
Yeah, good, thanks. So I don't think we need to motion that. There is there is going to be some consulting support that's already provided in this capital budget. I would like to see 10 lighting crosswalks out of this. So $200,000 going towards that. To your point, Steve, like I would be disappointed if we spent, $150,000 on crosswalks and 50,000 on studies. But I don't think I need to make that motion. Happy to have administration weigh in here if they would like us to be clearer on that. So I'll see if administration wants to jump in on that one.
Madam Clerk.
I don't think that level of detail is necessary in the motion. I think administration understands what this motion means and we understand the direction here.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We're good with that, Sam? I'll go on the next speaker, Councilor McCook. Kat, you have the floor. Oh, sorry, Steve, you were done, right? Yep. I thought you were okay. Good, thanks. Kat, you have the floor.
Thank you. One of my questions was how did you come up with the amount, but you clarified that. So I appreciate that. I agree that it would be good to see the full 200K go towards 10, if possible. I also see that 50th Street adjacent to the Lions RV Park is listed in here as a possibility, as a place to review for enhancement. And I just want to highlight that I'd like to see that as one of the places, as I know we've had a lot of complaints and feedback in regards to it being a little risky to cross that road. So hopefully that becomes part of it, but I just wanted to highlight that piece. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Councillor Penrith, followed by Councillor Telebus. Philip, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. So just to be really brief, I'm favorably disposed towards this motion, but I would like, before I vote, just some clarification and some comfort. We made a pretty big decision last night to draw from some of our government transfer pool to be able to service the school site. And if I could see some updated numbers on where that will stand before we start spending more money out of those pools, I would appreciate that.
So on page 40, that's the grant page, if you want to refer to your hard copy. And it does show, before Mr. Blanco jumps in, it does show a current projected close balance of 10,982,000. So the 200,000 would come from that total. And that would reduce it by 200 plus the amount we were looking at doing from grants for the school site from our discussions last evening. So Mr. Blanco may want to expand on that possibly, but that's the gist of it. I'll let Mr. Blanco just take a second here and make sure we're answering your question for you, okay?
Yeah, and just to clarify, the reason I asked for that is because it can be tricky to track what line or what source is paying for what capital piece. And sometimes you just get that one nice little dash. And we've been instructed that once these projects are approved, sometimes then the decision comes forward around what stream will pay for it. And I understand that's because of restrictions that are put on those funds by the.
Thank you. Mr. Blanco is ready to go.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Including the motion that was passed on Tuesday night for leasehold improvements, which was funded by government transfer. So that was also a reduction, but with the adjustment for the school site and that leasehold project, and then considering the 200,000 here, the projected close for government transfers would be approximately 2 million.
Okay. Mr. Blanco, would you do me the favor of keeping track of any additional motion that might come through the rest of the night on capital? We're on capital tonight, so we just spent potentially 200 grand if a motion gets passed from grants, correct? So
correct. Yeah, the same sheet that has the tax levy, or the same file has an additional tab that tracks capital changes.
Right. So just to clarify, if you don't mind one more time. So if the motion were to pass right now, it puts us at roughly a $2 million balance in grants from page 40, correct?
Yeah, projected closing balance for 2024.
Projected close. Thank you for clarifying the wording. Mr. Penrod, you're good?
Thank you. Yep, that's what I was looking for.
Good, thank you. Councilor Telebus, Nathan, you have the floor.
Thank you. Councillor Monkoff Swain, obviously 100%, I support this motion. My only concern is that I know we have in brackets there lighting for crosswalks, but it just as example, my concern is that maybe some of this funding will be applied to things like curb extensions, which I don't think is your intention, but it is mentioned within that program there. So I just want clarity that it's 100% dedicated to the lighting as opposed to some of those other options.
Yeah, Bill? Oh, good. Yeah, so, yeah, absolutely right. That is the intention. I think administration's heard that we want it for crosswalks and not for the other traffic calming measures. But again, I'll defer to administration if they want us to make it clearer in here to put for crosswalks. Then happy to make that or adjust the motion. I don't think we need to, but I'll leave that for administration.
Yeah, Sam, you can't see the thumbs up from Mr. Schwartz, but they're very, oh, hang on, Mr. Schwartz, you want to weigh in on that last comment?
Yeah, just quickly, Councilor Monkoff Swain, Ms. Bojea is in the process of amending the motion because I think we need clarity and thanks for asking that question because we did need that clarity.
Okay, just hang on, Sam. We're going to tweak it here and have you look at it. So it's clear on the intent. Oh, it's already done. Thanks.
Already done, and I can see that live as that goes.
Okay.
So Ms. Bujaya, am I amending my motion here? And you want me to read it back into the?
Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Monkoff Swain, I think that's a friendly amendment. It's clarifying the intention of your motion. So as long as you accept that as a friendly, no need to reread it.
Perfect. And thanks, Nathan, for catching that. That's a good veteran move on your behalf.
Okay. Nathan, you're good?
Yep, thank you.
Okay. Seeing no further requests to speak, I also like the motion and I like the idea of doing it, and it's going to be very good for our residents. So seeing no further requests to speak, Sam, do you wish to make one quick final comment on your motion, or are we prepared to go to the vote?
I think they're there. No more for me.
You're there to go? Okay. Seeing no further questions or comments, Council, I will ask you to vote on the motion before you. Sam, need to ask you verbally, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you. I assume that, but just get it clarified. That carries unanimously, 7-0. Thank you, Council. Are there any, Councilman Newkirk, sorry, did you want to speak before we voted? I didn't think so.
I was waiting until it was done.
Okay, yeah, thanks. So I think that kind of brings us to the close on the discussion on that topic. Unless anybody else has something else you want to say about traffic safety, or you do? Okay, thanks, Steve. Councilman Newkirk, you have the floor, Steve.
Yeah, thank you. And Councillor Natellenboss read my mind a little bit. I was waiting until this one was done to talk about the other traffic calming measures. And for myself, I'm not comfortable with administration moving forward with any traffic calming measures into the future until council hears back the results of the 56A pilot study. Just looking for maybe some advice from the clerk about, do I need to motion that or how should this work? I just want to make sure that council hears back the results of that pilot study before any additional curbs are put anywhere in the community.
Hang on, Steve, we'll just figure out who best to reply. Steele Schwartz, you have the floor, sir.
And I'm completely thinking out loud here, so if somebody's got a better idea. If I recall, we just made a general statement on traffic calming. From my perspective, if that's the wish of council, I'm gonna need to hear, I'm thinking this through, I'm gonna need to hear that.
Sure.
So, yeah, I think, can you help me if I'm wrong, that we do need a motion that says, do not invest further in other traffic calming measures until the report comes. I'd be comfortable with that.
I'm definitely fine with that clarity.
And then let's get a 4-3 vote and then
we'll see where it goes.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Thank you. I just want perhaps to clarify, when we talk about traffic calming measures, that we're all agree, there's clear understanding as to what that entails. I will very happily draft a motion and we can deal with it in the subsequent motion section. But we might want to invite Director Luecki just to speak to what that entails. just to make sure that we're clear on what we're directing administration. I'm not a traffic expert, so that's why I'm a little bit hesitant. And I
yeah.
just want to make sure
Perhaps-
we're all on the same page.
Yeah, perhaps, Mayor, I can just provide some clarity on that.
If you're,
My main concern is additional curbing. So I'm prepared for my motion to very succinctly say additional curbing. My fear may be similar to what the clerk just said, additional traffic calming measures is quite a broad sweep. And the clarity that I'm seeking is on any additional curbs to be placed around the community. So if that clarity helps, thank you.
CO Schwartz wants to jump in on that one.
Just want to give you a word, curb extensions is.
Perfect.
exactly
That,
what we put in place.
whatever wording we can use to just be clear, and subject to hearing the feedback from the 56A pilot study.
Which
That's
is
all.
coming in Q1.
That's
of
right.
Next year, yeah.
That's right.
Okay, that helps.
Okay, so Madam Clerk, we will come back to subsequent motions with Mr. Councilman Newkirk's later on in the evening. Just remind me if you don't mind. I would appreciate that. I know you won't. That's why I'm saying you're going to remind me, and I won't miss a beat. Thank you,
Thank you
Steve.
for the help with that.
Okay, we'll get back to you on that one for sure then. All right. Seeing no further discussion on traffic safety, next on our list, fleet and equipment growth. Any questions, concerns, thoughts on this one? Seeing none, parks, playgrounds, and play field growth. Subcategory of sports field bleachers. Councilor McCook, is this something you want to talk about, this one? Councilor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a motion that I'd like to put forward. Regarding garbage cans and benches. We had there was some addition, there is some money in there for it currently, and it is for 5 garbage cans and 5 benches. So I'd like to propose that the 2024 capital budget be amended by increasing funding in the amount of 23,000 to the Parks, Playground, and Playfield Growth Program from 77,500 to 100,500 for the purpose of doubling the number of additional garbage cans and benches from 5 to 10. So technically there would be, I guess, 20, 10 of each to be funded from government transfers. The purpose of this, we've heard quite a bit that there's not enough garbage cans around the community. There's not enough benches, especially on some of those longer stretches of trails for people to sit down. And I just think for the size of our community that 5 at this time is just not sufficient. I think it'll be pretty hard to decide where just 5 benches go. So I'd like to see that doubled at least at this time.
Thank you, Councilor. Appreciate your comments on your motion. At this time, open up to members of council for discussion, thoughts, and on this motion. Councilor Penrith, followed by Councilman Newkirk. Philip, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm speaking in favor of this motion. I heard a lot of that same feedback and continue to hear it. Folks love to use those great assets that we've all paid for, and it is currently impinging on people's ability to use them just because they know where to take a break. So my additional comment is in a similar vein to what Councillor Van Newkirk had just clarified, is would it be helpful for us to give additional direction to administration to move forward and clarify and get into place our policy that my understanding is still kind of in the works around citizens' ability to sponsor benches or other such infrastructure in our parks. I know that we have a not insignificant amount of people who would love to sponsor and dedicate to a loved one or a particular event some of this kind of infrastructure. And I think that program, if we can get it up and running, could really help us augment what the spirit of this motion is.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that comment. I'm not sure if we can sort of direct administration where to put these 10 benches, but we need to sort of.
No, to be clear, I'm not
That's what-
asking to direct
That's
where
what
they
I thought you
go.
meant, just to clarify that.
Yeah,
But I
no.
knew that's what you meant, but I'm not sure you came across exactly that way.
The spirit of what I'm saying is that I think they're actually, we could add more benches, more infrastructure faster at no cost to the taxpayer or our capital budget, because people are willing to actually provide these, but understanding that we can't have people just buying stuff from Canadian Tire or Home Hardware and popping it up into our parks. We have
Like a
to,
legacy program where you can
Yeah,
buy a bench,
exactly.
and dedicate a bench to the
Yep.
citizens from so-and-so, or legacy program. We have talked about that before, and I think we got something coming in the future on legacy. I see Mr. Suter nodding his head, so
yeah.
that's a good point, because Mr. Suter is well aware of a desire to have a legacy program.
So that's
People
where
can
I was
plant a
wondering,
tree, do a bench, that kind of thing.
yeah, so that's where I was wondering if it would be helpful to have some direction from us tonight to move that, to operationalize that program sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I'm not sure when Mr. Suter plans on bringing back the legacy idea, but I believe it's on his radar, so we're talking the same thing, more a matter of how it's already in the books from Mr. Suter, so I'm sure we'll get an expedited report on that as soon as possible. Your comments are well taken. Mr. Suter, would you be able to maybe give us some enlightenment on the idea of the legacy program that it's on your radar?
Yeah, thank you. We've been looking at this for a little while now and trying to refine it. And I think we're going to bring it to council in Q1 of 24, along with that review of the naming policy for parks, as that was the direction, if I'm remembering correctly. So I think we're going to tandem on that and deliver a draft program that at the same time.
Good. That's satisfied, Mr. Penrod. You're good. Thank you very much. Councilman Newkirk, Stephen, you have the floor on this one.
Yeah, thank you. Couldn't support this more. We could use 40 more benches, but we'll get there, and we'll find ways to get there. The biggest piece of feedback I've received on benches, which I've shared with council and administration before, is in fact on that stretch on 243 between specifically 50th Ave north to 510. There are no benches from 510 all the way to 625 on that trail. But what I would point out is that with the land being built out, the foot traffic between 510 and 50th Ave on 243 is becoming quite a bit. I would ask administration to consider, a bench or two along that path, right? I don't want to get in the weeds here and suggest where else, but I 100% have received a lot of feedback about no benches on that trail. It's a beautiful trail, all kinds of garbage cans, there's just no bench. So that's all, I'll just leave it at that, Mayor. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Councillor, and I will relay the same thing. Many of the people who request these benches really like our path system. They think it's well maintained, it's properly done in many areas, and they actually love to be able to walk as far as they can. Sometimes they need a little break to sit down and catch their breath and enjoy the view sometimes. So this is a good motion. I'm looking forward to any further discussion, but reiterate the fact that many of these walkers really enjoy our walking paths, are well maintained, and kudos to the city on that one. They give me lots of kudos there. Just want to sit down once in a while they're doing it. Simple as that. So seeing no further discussion on the motion, Council Cook, do you have any following comments before I call for the vote? Okay, thank you very much. Council, I'll ask you now to vote on the motion before you. Councilor Swain, how do you vote verbally?
In favor.
Thank you, Councillor. With Sam's vote, Nathan, I think hit your button one more time either way, please. I'm not showing anything on my screen. Here we go, thanks. That carries unanimously, 7-0. Thank you, Council. And that does take approximately 23,000 off the grant on page, I think it's 40. And that's, so 2 million less about 23 grand is the ballpark number Mr. DeBlanco gave us a few minutes ago. So just so we're consistent with our grant balance there, projected balance, pardon me, for the end of the year. Anything further on parks, playgrounds, and playfield growth? Seeing none, we'll move on to council capital initiatives. This is also sort of, Councillor Barnhart, you should speak to this one. Great. Councillor Barnhart, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I might be jumping ahead, but maybe you wanted to speak to this one. I don't know, but I was actually looking at this number and then the answers to the question. I think it was your question, Mayor. What was the 75,000 set aside for? And it looks like at this time it's not identified anything specific. It's there in the event that council would like to make some enhancements. So I guess the question I want to ask is, if we don't have a need that comes forward, that money stays in the capital reserves or budget, wherever it's coming from. Is that correct?
Mr. Blanco?
That's correct.
Thank you.
So at this time, there's nothing planned to be spent out of there.
Nothing planned. It's a
just in the
discretionary-
event that.
It's a discretionary fund for council, and same time something pops up middle of the year that we don't want to
Yep.
spend some money on, we have some flexibility.
Okay, I
It's-
just
it,
wanted
uh,
to make sure that that
yeah.
was clear. Thank you.
The administration suggested this, I think last year for this year's capital budget to have a little bit of a discretionary fund of a small nature. This is what it ended up being, so. Okay, if there's no discussion on this topic, then going any further, I'll move on down to the next one, which is technology growth, council chamber camera. Oh, sorry, did we miss something? Hang on a second, we'll put the brakes on for a moment. Councillor Barnhart, do you wish to revisit the issue of
yeah,
the council
thanks to
capital initiative?
my councillor colleague here reminded me that there was an intention for next Christmas to look at enhancements to the Centerville Park for the seasonal decorations. So I'm just not sure which part of capital that would be. That would be, perhaps I could do a motion at the end, or would that come here? That would be growth.
You know what, Madam Clerk, I'm not sure, but I think we, because this is discretionary fund, we can do a motion anytime in the next number
Or
of
should come
months
out of the 70.
to activate it, or you can do it now, I suppose. There's no real wrong answer here. Mr. DeBlanco, do you wish, Madam Clerk first or Mr. DeBlanco? Mr. DeBlanco. Okay, you both said no thanks.
Oh, fair,
Okay,
fair.
we got Chip and Dale here, so I'm gonna go with Dale.
Go.
Dale? Chip and Dale. Dale, you're up.
You think it out.
The council capital initiative program is there to fund whenever council deems they would like. It can be today, it can be anytime during the year. Honestly, even the benches addition here would have been a good project to pull from that, but it can remain there as a fund to be available for the year, or council can allocate it this evening.
Okay, so Councillor Barnard, you can sort of formulate something
Yeah,
tonight, and get back to it
and-
later tonight, or we can come back, you can do the motion at a future meeting if you
Well,
want
I'll,
to.
I'll have it ready by this.
Okay,
by the end
so
of the
subsequent motions down the road tonight?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
we'll come back to you on
Thank
that
you.
one. Councillor Telebus, Nathan, you have the floor. We're on the same topic here.
Yeah.
Okay, please proceed.
I guess kind of tying that all together, given that we're approached very often by the general public and small asks, things like garbage cans and benches, I'm just asking if I could make the motion to increase that amount from 75,000 to 100,000, adding an additional 25,000 for some of these small initiatives and projects that come up throughout our tours and conversation with the general public.
Okay, so before the motion is made, I may ask Mr. DeBlanco where that extra 25,000 would come from to top it up to 100 if the motion were to pass. Where would it come from as a funding source?
As it stands right now, it's government transfers, so it would just increase that amount.
It'd be page 40 transfers, just so we know that. Okay. Do you want to make a motion right now to that effect? We can wordsmith it now if you like.
May as well,
Okay.
please, Mayor.
We'll give Madam Clerk a chance to do that. Take a moment here. The motion we just passed was for garbage cans, correct? Right. Nope. This is an additional, sorry, I'm speaking for you, Nathan, but Councilor Telebus wants to increase the overall council capital initiative from the proposed 75,000 to 100. No specific project attached to it. Nathan, you good with that?
Yep, thank you.
Sorry, helping you wordsmith it, but I know Madam Clerk's got lots on her plate right now, so we'll get it clarified for you. And the funding source, if necessary, would be from grants. Right. As Mr. DeBlanco mentioned a moment ago. No problem. Curtis, your mic's still on. Do you want to speak anymore? Your mic is still on. I'll turn it off for you. Okay.
Well, I guess if you don't mind, Mayor, I'll just speak to the
Why
motion
don't
now.
you speak to it before we have it? Sure, let's save some time. Sure, please proceed.
Perfect. So as mentioned, as I've said right from the get-go, I do like to be conservative in funding, but I do feel that this is an appropriate need to quickly access some funds as required as we run into small scenarios and initiatives that we feel would help improve the community. So that's the reason I'm proposing the additional 25,000.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Motion is available. I'll have you move the motion, then I'll go to discussion, okay? So Kathy, your motion would be specific to the council initiative fund, right? Your motion about the Christmas tree? You'll make it specific to this? Yeah, it could be. It's up to you, right? It's your motion. So I'm saying you could make it specific to the council capital initiative for source of funding as opposed to grants, right? Yeah. But the extra 25 has to come from grants to top it up to 100. It's got to come from grants. But how you spend it could be under your motion. So if this passes at 100, you might propose to spend 25 on a Christmas tree for next year. Right, well, whatever the number is, whatever you decide to make the motion. Well, maybe to a maximum or something, right? Yeah, up to. But it should be specific to the initiative, right?
I think so.
It should be. It should be, yeah. 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 You're good?
Yeah.
Yeah, just be a moment here. Oh, sorry, it's up there already. I was talking to Kathy. If you're ready, Counselor, if that suits you, please proceed.
Perfect, thank you. I would like to put forward the motion that the proposed 2024 capital budget be amended by increasing funding in the amount of 25,000 to increase the council capital initiative fund from 75K to 100K to be funded by government transfers.
Thank you, Counselor. You've already spoken to it to your satisfaction and mine as well. Thank you for that. Discussion on the motion from members of council. Seeing none, I see Sam's hand's not up. That's fine. So at this point, I will ask council to vote on the motion before you. Councilor McSwain, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you. And council, that carries also unanimously, 7-0. Thank you, council. And we'll come back to Councillor Barnhart in subsequent motion on this particular council global at the end. Yeah, that's what we'll circle back to you. Okay, no problem. So we will then continue on page 22 of capital. Next topic is technology growth, council chamber camera, and they need a 38,000 also coming from our government grant program. Any questions, concerns, thoughts on this particular item? Seeing none? Okay, we'll move on then. That covers off the entire growth category on page 22 of the capital budget. Next on capital is offsite levy. Arterial roads in the budget of being 1.42 million, coming from offsite levy source of funding. So, sorry, Councillor Telebus, do you wish to speak to this topic?
Yes, I just for everyone's knowledge, I think it's important because I asked the question, do we really need to upgrade this system? And I guess I'll get administration to answer that if okay. I do feel that the answer was more than adequate, but I would like everyone to know why we're looking at doing this.
On the arterial roads?
No, sorry, just for upgrading the equipment within the camera and what have you.
Sorry, I went past that, so that's okay. I'll come back to it. So the question is on the council chamber camera. That was a question from Councillor Telebus. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Natellenbos. Unfortunately, one of my colleagues is not here from our corporate analytics and technology, and she has some of the expertise, but I can speak to some of it. So really, this is about making enhancements to some of our equipment that is at its end of life. So, you know, the lifespan is typically, I think we sort of cap out at 10 years and we're reaching 8 years with the audio system. So we're into that phase where if we have a failure, we can't just simply replace what we have. We would have to upgrade. So it's a timely time to do the upgrades. The camera, we would like to make sure that we're keeping pace with technology and that we have a reasonable level of technology in this room. Just to keep the level of council meetings and availability to public that we're currently providing. So it's really just about keeping pace with technology. If you ask me to speak to the technical specifics, I won't be able to, but I can at least speak to the rationales for it.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. And my understanding too is just that if there were to be a failure, if we don't procure properly upfront, we're likely to see significant cost.
And a long downtime. That's what we're trying to avoid. The other thing we'd really like to do is to have the second camera so we could have both views. We're very limited in our view. It's a static view. So it would make the experience a little bit better, especially for those participating remotely or watching from home as well. So that's the other advantage.
Perfect. Thanks so much. And it's always important that everyone gets involved and active within these conversations and at least watching this. So I think it's a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. See no further comments to speak on this particular topic. That brings us to the end of the growth section. Lastly, on page 22 of capital, the last section on page 22 is the offsite levy in the amount of $1,422,000, which is also funded by offsite levies. So it's revenue neutral in that sense in terms of our capital budget. So I'm seeing nobody when, oh, Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, do you wish to speak to this topic? Steve, you have the floor.
No, I'm just looking to put motions forward for other capital items. So just whenever you're ready to do that.
That's next on the agenda for sure. Appreciate that. So seeing no further discussion on offsite levies, that brings us to the close of page 22, capital budget. At this time, we now will entertain motions from members of council for additional capital items to be considered and debated and voted on for the 2024 capital budget. Councilman Newkirk, I'll go to you first then. Please, Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So tonight I'm going to propose 3 different items for consideration, 3 different motions for consideration of council to add to the capital budget. I'm going to start with the largest amount one first, just so we can have that discussion and get an up or down on that. I'll just be looking for the clerk to put up a motion regarding the installation of a culvert. If we recall from previous meeting, just wait a second while that motion is put up.
Please make your motion when you're ready, Steve, then you can welcome to speak to it.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I would move that the proposed 2024 capital budget be amended by adding funding in the amount of $310,000 for the purpose of installing an engineered culvert structure to connect the 63 Street pathway to the Beaumont Sport and Recreation Center parking lot as set out in option 1 of the November 14th, 2023 report to be funded from government transfers. Yeah, and just to speak to that, once again, I'm really optimistic that we can bring this project in under that amount. I don't want to change the amount. I do think it could be done for significantly less, but that's not the discussion that I would want to have here. For me, this path has been something that has been a troublesome piece for administration for years. They're countlessly pulling out homemade bridges from that area, debris, refuse. I've seen people try to push wheelchairs across here. I've seen strollers stuck in there, people going through there at night. It's quite a safety hazard. The trail continuity from east to west across that piece of the canal that will bring us up into the BSRC will be a real welcome addition to that trail coming out of the neighborhood to the east. And I'm looking for council's and asking for council's consideration and support for this motion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. With that, I'll open up to members of council for questions, thoughts to debate this particular proposed motion. Councillor Telebus, Nathan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Councillor Van Nieuwkerk. I think my concern with this is exactly what you said. The 310,000 price tag. I know you're optimistic in hoping that we can reduce that price, and if that was a guarantee, I would very likely support this. But I'm struggling to swallow that pill of 310K for a small little path. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Sam, I see your hand is up. So Sam, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks. So I think that the concept is right. I get why we're putting it forward. The number is what concerns me, especially after our motion last night. And so I will remind council that the motion last night for the school site was to fund the school site, the cost for the school site from grants, as well as administration to look at other funding sources, and they're going to bring that back in Q1. So today, like we've heard, our number is 2 million, and we've already started to add and cut that down a little bit today. I wonder if Councillor Van Nieuwkerk consider, deferring this until Q1, and we know whether that 8 million or how much that 8 million is actually coming out of capital for moving forward, so out of those government reserves. I know this is a passionate project of yours, and you're going to want to most likely want to push it through. But if the motion's in front of me now, I would have to vote no, just given the number here. If it came back in Q1, once administration has had a chance to look at that $8 million item, then for me, this is something that I would look to support. So that's just where I'm going now. So maybe I'll see if Councillor Van Nieuwkerk has any comments or questions on that potential approach.
Steve, do you wish to make a comment before I go to any other councillors?
Yeah, no, thank you for the comments. Oh, am I good?
Yeah, you're on.
Yeah, thank you for the comments, Councillor Tellenboss and Monkoff Swain. While you were speaking, Sam, I came up with another idea in my head that I think I'll maybe put a subsequent motion in at the end of budget, and I can work with the clerk on that. So what I would like to do now, Mayor, is withdraw this, and then I will put forward a subsequent motion, and that motion will speak to dialing in that 310.
Okay.
I think maybe
prerogative.
that's the prudent thing to do.
Let's do that.
So that's where I will be going there, and I'll withdraw this motion now, and perhaps I'll try a smaller one.
Okay. Well, you have the floor you mentioned having three things. So this is number one. We'll take it off the docket, and I'll go to your second motion you wish to make, and we'll come back to this one later on in subsequent, as we talked about a moment ago.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to put forward a motion to support the Heritage House. If that motion could be displayed, please.
Yes, you are busy
Sorry.
tonight.
I wasn't sure the mayor was going to let me do two in a row, so I'm rolling with it.
Oh, I'm giving you 3 in a row, Steve. I'm
Okay.
feeling very generous tonight. Feeling very generous on the agenda.
Yeah, thank you. And we're very patient, so it's
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is that the right one you need, Steve?
that's right. Yeah.
Please make your motion.
Yes, I'd like to, so I was just reading it over there just to make sure.
Yeah, no
I would
problem.
like to move that the proposed 2024 municipal capital budget be amended by adding funding in the amount of 45,000 for the purpose of supporting the Beaumont and District Heritage Society's enhancement to St. Jacques House, e.g. parking lot and landscaping.
Thank you. Please speak to your motion.
Yes, thank you. We heard a great presentation from the Heritage Society, and the work has been ongoing on the exterior of that project. What we heard was a really large portion of the $50,000 ask that they brought was for the pavement and the exterior grading around that paved piece. And we also heard that work had to be completed before some of the donated work around the planting and the shrubbery and the planting plans could be executed. So what I would like to achieve, if this motion would pass, would be to provide the Heritage Society with some certainty on the funding for that pavement and the contouring around the pavement, so that they can plan to get that done early in the season and trigger the donations that are awaiting the completion of that work. So that's my goal here, is to help them out with some certainty, asking for council's support on this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I see Councillor Penrod is willing to speak this motion first of all. So Councillor Penrod, you have the floor.
Yeah, and thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to speak in favor of this motion. I know that we have supported the St. Jacques Heritage House project in the past. So for me, supporting this motion is really about getting this gem of an asset in our community open to the public as soon as possible. I have no doubt that if left to their own devices, if we're not able to come through with this $50,000, the dedicated volunteers surrounding this project will find a way to get it done, but it could be years down the road. In the meantime, our community is starved for meeting places. This will provide some. I think there is some sleeping potential here to drive some visitation to our community. I'll even dare to call it tourism around what they're developing around the Family History Center in the basement. I think doing some reading on top emerging tourism trends in North America, and surprised to see that garden visitation is number one, but hot on its heels is people getting interested in their family lineage. And this is an opportunity to build. It's already there. We just got to get it open to the public, a really great opportunity for people to come. And I think we can build that around our one of our dedicated themes around celebrating our French Canadian settler village aspect to Beaumont. So for these reasons, I'm in support of the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Other members of council wish to speak to the motion. Councillor Barnhart. Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you. Glad you brought this one forward because I do want to see them get the funding. Just one quick question, Councillor Van Newkirk. Why 45 and not the 50 that they asked for? I'm not sure I understood. I think they asked for 50, did they not?
Oh, sorry, Steve. Your mic's on now.
Yeah, the reason I chose 45 is because they had suggested that the biggest portion of the work that was there was on the exterior, and being from the capital side of things, what I wanted to do is I wanted to make sure the exterior could all move forward in this season. So that's where I came up with the 45 from.
I definitely will support this motion. I think the amount of labor and sweat funding that's gone into this has definitely more than been what we've contributed, and it's certainly been an investment over the years. So I definitely think that, like you say, it will be a jewel, Councillor Penrod. So it is a jewel, and it's attracting a lot of good support and sponsorship from within the community. So I'd be happy to support it, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate that. Councillor Natellavas. Nathan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. A lot of good comments here. Obviously, I appreciate the heritage side of this, and the value and the sweat equity that's gone into this. My concern is just the continuous flow of funding that has gone into this project. I'm not sure if anyone has the numbers available, but I would be curious to see how much funding we've provided over the past 5 years, let's say. Just to get an idea as to, again, how much financial contribution we've provided.
Actually, I wrote that down on my portfolio, which I left at home last night from the presentation on Tuesday or Wednesday. So does anybody have top of their head?
So off the top of my head, Mayor, I don't know, but this was presented to us Tuesday night, and there was about a 6 or 7 bullet point summary in there that included all of that information.
Yeah.
I suppose I could look it up here.
I keep thinking it was $70,000 or $80,000. That's ringing a bell for some reason. Again, my memory is sometimes a little foggy. Mr. Penrod, can you give us some enlightenment on that? Do you happen to know that number offhand from the presentation?
Yeah, so from our meeting on November the 28th, agenda item 6.1, the presentation from the Beaumont and District Heritage Society, slide 2 of their presentation, about halfway down, shows that they have received about $75,000 in support. I think that, to be clear, that's cash. There's been some other in-kind support they've received from the city, for which they've been very appreciative of, but like the cash piece. And just while I have the floor, I'll just speak to Councillor Natellavas's concern. I share that concern. The reason I'm supporting this motion is I think this is the $45,000 that gets the project over the finish line so they can get open. There might be some sanding and painting inside that needs to be done, but that'll be stuff that can happen once the public has access to this building.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Natellavas, you still have the floor, actually. Continue if you like.
Yeah, I guess just to finalize my thoughts on this, again, I do appreciate where it's coming from, and the heritage is really important, and that's what equity is. It's, you know, you can't put a number on that. But I am struggling to fund again for this project. I do appreciate maybe we could fund it through other ways. As we had mentioned, maybe it's equipment, maybe it's excess materials we have, but I am struggling to absorb the 45,000.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing any other further comments before I make a comment myself, allow the rest of the council members to speak before I go to Steve for a final comment. Okay, I'll go forward then. I share Councillor Telebas, your concern, Nathan. There's no doubt this is a great project, but unfortunately as council, we sometimes have to make choices that we sometimes don't want to make. We're looking at funding very large projects. It's only 45,000 in some respects. I get that. However, it is 45,000. They're also looking at coming back for a grant as well on top of the 50,000 asked from Tuesday night's meeting. So I'm concerned, as you had mentioned with your outline of coming back to us again. I'm not sure this 45,000 will get the entire project finished, coming back for grants in the future. So I'm going to be not supporting this motion based on the outline of the comments you made, Nathan, and myself as well. So seeing any further comments, it's now Councilman Newkirk. It's your motion. You're the final comment before I go to the vote. Stephen, you have the floor.
Yeah, you betcha. As was stated before, it's really hard to quantify the time and effort that's went into this by this group. There are impending donations from community companies that are unlocked by supporting this motion. Those donations sit in waiting until the pavement and land around the pavement is finalized. So I think it's a prudent thing to do to get the exterior of this facility buttoned up in this upcoming growing season. My concern is if this isn't approved, then we're going to have another season of weed complaints. We're going to have another season of erosion issues down the alley for the neighbors next door to deal with. We're going to have another season of muddy mess when it rains, and just another season of general concerns from the residents adjacent to that area. So that's what we sign up for if we don't approve this next piece to get it over the line. So once again, I ask for council support on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Okay. All right. Going forward, see no more further comments. So with that, council, I will ask you to vote on the motion before you. Councillor Monkhouse-Swain, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you. And that motion carries 5-2. Councillor Telebas and Mayor Daniluk in opposition. The other 5 members of council in the yes category. So it does carry 5-2. Thank you, council. Appreciate that. Steve, you had another motion you wanted to make when you're ready for that, and we'll move along as best we can here.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, sorry, I turned off your mic. I apologize. Steve, you have the floor now.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to hold off on this next one just to see what others might bring forward. Thank you.
Okay, so you're going to yield the floor?
Yeah, for now I will. Yeah, I'm interested in seeing what others bring forward here. So,
okay.
I
get that.
Councillor Monkhouse-Swain or someone else has something prepared. So thank you.
No problem. Other members of council, I know Sam, I think Sam, you haven't mentioned you have a motion coming. So yeah, during subsequent, yeah. We call them subsequent at the very end, yeah. So at this point, Sam, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll ask Mr. PJ to bring up my motion here. So the motion that I will move is that the proposed 2024 capital budget be amended by adding funding in the amount of 200,000 for the costing, design, location, and construction for cricket pitch and netting to be funded from government transfers, and that administration bring back a report by the end of Q2 identifying the proposed cost, design, and location prior to construction. So I'll speak to that. This is something, so some of you may not be familiar with cricket, but there are many residents in our community who are. I know a lot of people who leave the community, go into Mill Woods, where they have where they play cricket and practice cricket. If you're not familiar with it, with cricket netting is effectively like a batting cage. So the scope or the size of this is relatively small. not looking to take over in any giant park. And so, and here we talk about cricket pitch and netting, and for administration, if we could only find the nets, the cricket netting, then that would be satisfactory. I can't see a field that wouldn't impact soccer, and to place a cricket, a full cricket oval. And so, these things can be scoped and located pretty much anywhere, and we've got plenty of park space that could do this. So, as I mentioned, that this falls under the kind of that inclusive, that equity kind of frame that we're looking at. Again, obviously there's a lot more than just the South Asian community who play cricket, but my good friends from that community remind me all the time, and I think this is a good example of us showing something in our budget for some different folks across Beaumont here. So hoping to get the support on that, and then I will just add that last point in that motion here is that council will get a chance to take a look at kind of where these go prior to us moving forward with the construction. So I'll leave it there and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Councillor. Before I go to my fellow council members for questions, Madam Clerk, the way the motion is before us, I'm assuming then this becomes kind of a placeholder. We'll get the report back from administration by the end of the second quarter. And if for some reason council doesn't proceed, then the money's not going to be spent, obviously, and we go forward. So report has to come first, right? It's sort of more of a placeholder in our budget, just someone else.
If I could, Mr. Mayor, they administration will need some of that 200,000 to do the costing, design, and locating work. But the large majority of the actual construction and execution of it would be made the decision once we move that forward. But I want to provide some of that budget in here now so they can bring that back by the end of the second quarter.
Madam Clerk.
I was going to say essentially the same thing, but I was going to suggest that perhaps we invite Mr. Luecki to speak to that. Just, that's his expertise.
That's fine. Mr. Luecki, thank you.
Thank you, through the mayor, to Councillor Monkoff-Swain. Yes, I think your approach is good in the sense that we do need funds to do a design, and I would suggest that we would engage with user groups and so on to figure out siting and so on before we do a design and pick a location. I know that there's some noise and other concerns that we would have to consider for siting and so forth. So I think it's fair to bring back a report at the end of second quarter, and at that time we can determine in our report whether it's feasible or realistic to actually construct the facility before the end of 2024. Thank you.
Yeah, that's what I was anticipating from the motion, to clarifying. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I'll go to Councillor Penrith, followed by Councillor McCook. Philip, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This question could be for administration, but maybe also just for Councillor Monkoff-Swain, because I know this is a bit of a passion project for you. You mentioned Millwood specifically. What other facilities such as this exist in our region?
Sam?
Yeah, I mean, there's about 3 or 4 Millwood. Victoria Park has one downtown, down in the River Valley. There's a few kind of in East Edmonton. Yeah, and so I can could have been easier if I sent around kind of a picture of this. I think I spoke about this beforehand prior to getting on council, Mr. Penrod. I apologize, but I think that's where you'll get a better sense once that report comes back of the impact, right? Like, this is, again, think the size of a batting cage, a little bit larger than that, because you got to have a run up, etc. But yeah, again, the point of this, and I'll just maybe take this moment to respond to Mr. Luecki as well. The point of this is not just to throw 200K in and then come back and be disappointed on design, or all of a sudden now the cost is $1 million to do this. And so trying to follow through with that, that approach that we tried to adopt earlier this year, where we provide the money for the design, costing, and work, and then we make a decision on what that looks like based on the report that comes back to us. So this is trying to achieve that phased approach. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Any
Yeah.
additional comments?
And maybe I could have been clearer in my question. I think what I wanted to probe was the impact on the region. So clearly there are people in Beaumont that would use this the second that it is built. Could we also expect some folks coming from outside of Beaumont maybe to use it?
I don't see one.
I would say yes, but I just say yes because I'm trying to get your vote. I don't have any data to back that up.
You're good, Counselor? Thank you. Councilor Cook, followed by Councilor Barnhart, followed by Councilor Telebas. Pat, you have the floor.
Thank you. So sorry, I guess I'm not quite clear. The 200,000 is just for design.
No, the 200,000 is for the full costing, design, location, and construction. That was a written question that was asked of them. So not a written question. That was one of the discussions that we had back in June, June or July, when we put forward of council projects that we've heard from the community. And then when administration prepared the report, there was an amendment that had kind of 13 projects and some costs along with that. The number that came back was 200,000 from administration to do all of it. What I'm just adding that second part of the motion just to make sure that council has a chance to take a look at it before we move forward with construction.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that clarity. Yeah, I think, this does give us an opportunity to offer a variety of sports in our community. And I think, especially people who aren't just youth are often looking for different ways to move their bodies and get involved in different things. So I think this provides that opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Barnhart. Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I want to direct this to Mr. Suter. Mr. Suter, I'm just wondering about the part that our Recreation Advisory Committee might play in this particular item, whether that would be part of the project once, if it's approved, that you would then either consult with them or seek their advice on location. I know it's early days. You obviously don't have a project set up, but do you have any thoughts on the applicability of this project to asking for their advice?
Thanks for the question. That's a good idea. I think this is exactly the sort of topic that committee should look at if it comes to them. It hasn't come to them yet that I'm aware of, at least that I've been present in. But yeah, they would have a role here if it was brought to them for whether it was location, assistance there with engagement or scanning the region, for example. There's a few things that they could potentially participate in, and that might give council some further comfort if they come back with a recommendation to support something like that.
Yeah, thank you for that. And to Councillor Monkoff-Swain, I love the idea. I think it's a great start in looking at different ways to involve our community and to recognize the diversity and the inclusiveness of this project. So I will support it. I think the $200,000 is light when it comes to the construction part of it, but my understanding is it would come back and we would look at that at that time.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Telebas. Nathan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, I'm a big supporter of recreation, and I do appreciate where this is coming from. But given the year that we're having and some of the finances that we intend on spending, I think I would have to be a little more reserved here and show a little financial constraint. Although it's something that potentially I could support down the road, I just don't know that this is the year that we should be looking at something like this. And I'm hesitant to throw that price tag of 200,000. As Councillor Barnhart had mentioned, I do feel like that would come with more significant cost. A good example would be we're just looking at maintenance of some of our fields now, and that was coming in around that 300 mark. So yeah, I do believe it'll come with a bigger price tag. But thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Newkirk. Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks to the rest of council for chiming in on this one. I think to the point of this motion, Councillor Tellenboss, that's exactly what the second portion is to look after. So what this motion is saying is that there's a $200,000, we think that could be enough. But the second part of this motion is saying, go out, cost it, locate it, cite it, bring that back to council before you proceed. So there is a check and balance built into this. And quite frankly, I'm going to add that check and balance to a motion that I'm going to make, because then that makes sure that that cost that you just were concerned about getting out of control doesn't happen. And that's why I'm willing to support this one. Although, I have the same reservations around what should we spend, when should we spend it, given the decisions we've made. But some cost certainty around this with that second sentence, that piece there is what gives me comfort to support the motion. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate that. A quick chit chat there before I jump in. Okay, Nathan, a quick comment back.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. Well, thank you, Mayor, and thank you for that clarification, Councillor Van Nieuwert. Yeah, I guess if that was broken up, I would probably support the latter, but given that it's combined, I'm struggling just based on what I had mentioned there before.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll make a quick comment before I go back to Sam for a final comment before I call for the vote. I like the way this motion is set up. I agree with Steve's comments that I'm looking forward to the report. It won't take a big chunk of that 200,000 to do the report, and they'll do some user engagement too to find out utilization potential for it and location and final construction costs. So if costs do skyrocket, we have that choice at that time to see. It stays at a 200. I think that's a reasonable amount of dollars to spend on a brand new facility of this nature. So I will support the motion in its form because of the request for the report to come back for a final decision down the road. Having said that, I see another mention of comments. So Sam, I'll go to you for a final comment before I call for the vote, please. Sam, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. And let me just speak to Councillor Barnhart's question around going to the Sports and Rec Committee. So that's absolutely the intent. I didn't put it in the motion here because I know that Paul and his team would do that anyway. That Paul has that Sports, Rec and Culture Committee humming. And this is exactly the place for that. So I didn't want to motion them to do that because I knew they would do it in the background. So looking forward to getting their feedback as we look to cite this. So that's all I have to say here, and looking forward to the vote.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. And having said that, I'll now ask members of council to please vote on the motion before you. Councillor Monkhoff-Swain, how do you vote verbally?
In favor.
Thank you. Council, that passes 6-1 in opposition. Councillor Natelibus, 6-1 in favor. Thank you, Council. Well, it's smack dab at 7:30, our usual break time, give or take a few minutes. Rather than start a new motion, I'll ask for a short 10-minute break, preferably less if we can get back sooner, not a bad thing. Give Ms. Bougé a chance to catch her breath and maybe give her brain a bit of a break. So we'll be back here